So today, I want to start by asking you guys a question. And my question I want to start with is this. Have you noticed how obsessed our culture is, right? Whether it's through social media, through just the things you see as you go about your life. But have you noticed how obsessed we as a culture, as a people are with the idea of living our best life? Right? Like, have you heard that before? I imagine you don't go a day without hearing somebody talking about living your best life, right? That you need to live your best life. Like, this idea is really everywhere you look, right? Social media or just sign billboards, right? Everything is talking about living your best life. And so we're in this series called Chasing Carrots. And this is actually the last week of our series, Chasing Carrots. And we've been talking about how anything that you pursue more than you pursue Christ is a form of idolatry, right? We've talked about that. And today I want to talk about the carrot, right, that I've spent probably the better part of my life chasing. And this is the pursuit of comfort, right? Many of us spend the better part of our life chasing the endless pursuit of comfort. The endless pursuit of comfort. And so the text that we're going to look at today is kind of a tough one. It's in the letter of 1 John, and just so that we're all on the same page, let's talk about who John was for a second. John was a disciple of Jesus. And John was not only one of the 12, but John was one of kind of the inner three, right? Jesus had an even closer circle of friends. He had 3 guys, and John was one of them. And so John saw everything that happened, everything significant that took place during Jesus' ministry. John was there during the transfiguration, right? So he saw Jesus in his full glory. He was also at the foot of the cross at the crucifixion. He was there with Mary, with Jesus' mother. And so John saw it all. And in this time, in the time of 1 John, this is post-resurrection, and there's some pretty dangerous behavior happening in these brand new Christians. And it's being fueled by bad theology. And so John is writing to them, and when he writes to them, he really doesn't hold back at all. Right? In fact, this is what he says. We pick up in 1 John 2, verse 15. He says, "Do not love the world, nor the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him." Ouch. Right? Like, that's not cutting any corners there. And so what does that mean? Well, the very literal translation of the Greek word there literally means the world, right? But the contextual meaning, I think, is what's more appropriate here. And so for this text, he's saying don't love the cultural system of our world, right? And if you're still confused about what that is, let me explain it further. So for us, right, as people, there's this kind of gravitational pull towards the things of this world. And why is that? It's because everything around us says, build your life to where you've got enough, right? To where you've got more than enough, right? If you're going to live your life, you need to be able to do it in a way that you can do whatever you want, you can go wherever you want, you can do whatever you want with whoever you want, whenever you want. And you need to be able to do it without these like annoying distractions, or you want to be able to do these things, live your best life without things like pain or without any kind of struggle. And the cultural system of this world is essentially leading us to build a life where God is unnecessary because you've got it all covered. You've got enough in the bank account, you've got the job, you've got the family, you've got the house, the car, the vacations. Like, you've built your life to a place to where God is unnecessary because you've got it covered. That's what our world, our society is pushing us to. And so John is writing, and he says, when we find ourselves pursuing that, the love of the Father is not in us. And so understand that every single one of us, if you stop for a moment, you think about your desired life, right? You think about what your best life would be. If you could look 10, 15, 20 years into the future, what that perfect life would be. When you think about your desired life, the things you haven't yet attained, I promise you right now, every single one of us, that perfect life is more defined by ease than it is struggle. Is it not? When you think about your perfect life, you don't think like, man, I'm working 50 hours a week, I'm barely making ends meet, like I never know where my next meal is coming from. Like that's none of our perfect life. All of our perfect lives, these desired lives, is defined by ease. Like we've got it all. Life is easy. I retire early, I kick back on a boat on my lake house, like things are nice. It's more defined by ease than it is struggle. And so when unchecked, we naturally drift towards lazy and towards inactivity. Right? The perfect life for us is where I just make money without having to do anything. And I'm telling you, if your life is pursuing comfort, you're pursuing this thing that you'll never catch, this comfort, it's a counterfeit. It's not real. And so I want to talk to you about what does it mean, right? What are the dangers of pointing our lives in the direction of pursuing this counterfeit comfort? Because think about it for a moment. What is a counterfeit? Right? When you hear that word, a counterfeit is anything that is a close representation of something, right? Typically something that has great value, but the counterfeit itself has no value, right? None whatsoever. Right? Like a fake $100 bill looks a lot like a real $100 bill that has a lot of value, but the counterfeit, has no value whatsoever. And so the first danger in pursuing a counterfeit comfort is this. Is that in this pursuit, it reveals spiritual emptiness. It reveals spiritual emptiness because if I have to chase something out here, then could it be possible that I'm lacking something in here? And that's the why. That's why we're chasing these things. I'm chasing something out here constantly. It's the endless pursuit of more. And so maybe it's revealing that I'm really empty in here. And this is what John is saying. He's not saying, hey, you love your house, therefore you don't love God. That's not what he's saying. He's not saying you look forward to vacation and it's going to be amazing, but you don't love God. He's saying that if we are pursuing the cultural systems of this world, that you want to have everything covered, you want to be in control, then the love of the Father has not been allowed to penetrate your heart as deeply as it needs to. It means your life is not being driven by the love of God. It is not propelling you like the love of God does. Because think about the love of God. Think about the love of our Father in heaven. Think about the love of the Father for the poor, for the broken, for the outcast. I mean, if you just look at the life of Jesus and who he spent time with, that's what the love of God is. It's leaning into those who are forgotten. It's not building up a life for myself, but leaning into those who are less than, who are looked down upon. And so what would your life look like if his love, if the love of the Father, if love that looked like that was actually what was propelling your life? If that's what was driving you forward. Because I'm telling you, you cannot live in a pursuit of comfort when the God of all creation, when his heart is breaking. And so if our hearts are not breaking for what is breaking our Creator's heart, then there is a disconnect. If our hearts are not burdened over the same things as God's, there's a disconnect. We cannot live in a pursuit of comfort when God's heart is breaking. And so if pursuing a counterfeit comfort, it often reveals a spiritual emptiness. Look with me at this verse. I love what Paul writes in 2 Corinthians 5. This is what he says. He says, for Christ's love compels us. Right? It's not an outward chase. It's not me out here chasing more and more, but rather this love of Christ is an inward push, right? It's pushing me forward. It's compelling us. The love of Christ compels us that those who live should no longer live for themselves, should not chase the things of this world, should not chase their own comforts, but instead for him who died for them and was raised again. Our lives are no longer lived for ourselves, but are rather lived for him. So this pursuit of a counterfeit comfort, it reveals an emptiness. And so my prayer for you today is that God's love is going to get a little bit deeper inside of you than maybe it ever has. Because maybe you do know the love of the Father, but that's not what's driving you. That's not what has been propelling you. That's not what's been moving you forward in life. And so maybe the love of the Father just needs to get a little bit deeper. You need to see it a little bit clearer tonight. But the second danger I want to show you of this counterfeit, this empty pursuit, is that it ultimately eliminates our need for faith. It eliminates our need for faith. It eliminates our need for God. Because if you've built a life where you've got everything covered, then what do you need God for? What do you need faith for if you can just write a check for whatever problem comes your way? In Hebrews chapter 11, the author of Hebrew tells us, and they kind of show us this storyboard of the Old Testament, right? And they go story by story, and each one starts with by faith. And to show you just a few, it says, by faith, Abraham left the home of his ancestors to go to a place where God wouldn't even reveal to him. That's a hard thing. Then it says, by faith, Noah was called by God to build an ark, right? To build a boat, because there's going to be this flood. Only Noah had to convince people it was going to flood, and not a single person alive at this time had ever even seen rain. Right? So that's not an easy task. Then it says, by faith, Moses, the guy with a speech impediment who couldn't talk, had to face down the most powerful human on the planet in Pharaoh to deliver God's people. Hard, challenging. And so I'm living my life by faith. I'm living my life with such an audacious burden. I'm stepping out with such boldness that if God doesn't show up, I would be helpless and I would look like a fool. That's where we need to be. That we're living with such passion and such fervor for God that if he wasn't to show up, we would be helpless. Because as long as we can still do things on our own, then are we truly living by faith? And the author of Hebrews goes on to say this in Hebrews 11:6. He says, and without faith, it is impossible to please God. And so what part of your life, right, what burden are you pursuing? What are the dreams that you're daring to pray for? What are the things that seem impossible, but yet you're believing that by faith, you're going to see it happen? What are the things you're stepping out in, saying, God, if you don't show up, I'm helpless? In what areas of your life are you living boldly? Or are you continuing to just kind of do what seems reasonable for you? And I'll be honest, I don't even know how I would answer that question sometimes, but I do want to ask you this. Are you dreaming big enough? Are you praying big enough, bold enough prayers? Is your heart broken for the things that breaks God's heart? And I just want to challenge you with this, because very plainly tonight I want to put this to you in the simplest way I know how. I want to challenge you with all of this, because you cannot pursue comfort and walk by faith. You cannot pursue your own comforts and still walk by faith. You can't. You can do one or the other, but you cannot do both. And so if you find yourself tonight thinking, like, man, if I'm honest, my life is kind of headed down a superficial path, then let me tell you, you're not alone. Right? You're actually in good company, because everything in our world is pointing you in that direction. And so if that is the counterfeit, if that is the fake, then what is the authentic? What's real? Well, in order to spot the counterfeit, we're not going to study the counterfeit, but rather we're going to study the authentic. And why do we do that? We do that because we're going to know the authentic. We're going to know what is real so well that whenever we come across something fake, we're going to recognize it immediately and reject it. That is our goal, to know God, to know His truth so well that we are so in tune with Him and with His will that as soon as something counterfeit comes across our feed, comes across our path, we recognize it, that this is not from God. This is a worldly thing, and this is not for me. So for the rest of our time today, we're going to take a microscope and we're going to put it on the Word of God. And we're going to look at what an authentic example of biblical comfort is. And we're going to start in 2 Corinthians chapter 1. This is what Paul writes. Paul says, "Praise be to the God and the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion," and then look at this, "and the God of all comfort." And so we see right here, God is the sole embodiment of what we have been pursuing. He is the God of all comfort. And then why is He the God of all comfort? Paul tells us, because He comforts us in all of our troubles. But don't miss this. He comforts us in all of our troubles so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. Then he says this, "For just as we share abundantly in the sufferings of Christ." Now I'm going to stop right here, because we just read that He is the God of all comfort. But now we're seeing that we are sharing abundantly in the sufferings of Christ. And so, if you're a follower of Jesus, then what I just read, that we are sharing abundantly in the sufferings of Christ, then what I just read is supposed to be a part of your story. Right? This is supposed to be part of your story as a follower of Jesus. It's not supposed to be a life of ease and a life of comfort and a life of superficial inactivity and just kicking back with your feet up. We are called to share in the sufferings of Christ. And he says, "For we share abundantly in the sufferings of Christ, so also our comfort abounds through Christ." This is a biblical perspective of what most of us have been chasing. Only we've been chasing the fake, the counterfeit. We have not been chasing the real thing. And so, for us to chase the real thing, we've got to let go of this chase for counterfeit comfort. And so my encouragement to you today is, instead of chasing, change your prayer to, "God, help me to start embracing the real thing." And so what do we embrace? I want to show you two things. First, we embrace divine discomfort. I want you to embrace divine discomfort. I want you to welcome the struggle. Because think about this with me for a minute. Think about comfort food, right? You've heard that term before, right? Somebody shout out what comes to mind when you think of comfort food. Cookies, ice cream, mac and cheese. Okay, so think about, you've got all of that over here, right? You've got fried chicken, burgers and fries, cake, ice cream, mac and cheese, all of that. You eat this once a week, nothing bad really happens, right? You might not feel great afterwards, but nothing bad, right? And then over here on this side, you've got squats. You've got going to the gym, right? This is comfortable. This is super uncomfortable, right? Squats are uncomfortable. So you do this for a week. You do this for a week, nothing's really going to change. But if you eat this 5 days a week for 5 years, and you do squats 5 days a week for 5 years, comfort is going to lead to heart disease. Squats is going to make you look like The Rock. But don't miss this. Isn't it ironic and isn't it funny that pain ultimately produces the stuff that we want, but comfort kills us from the inside out? And this is what we see all throughout life. And I love the way that James puts this in James chapter 1, verse 2. And some of you know this verse, but I promise you there's an element of it that you're not fully aware of. This is what James writes. He writes, "Consider it all joy, my brothers, when you encounter various trials, various struggles, various pains, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its perfect result so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. And so we see this. We see that our faith is being tested. Right? That's what he says, knowing that the testing of your faith. And now, none of us like tests. If you like tests, then you are somebody that in high school I would not have gotten along with. But I still love you now. But for the most part, none of us like to take tests. And so when I read this and I hear my faith is going to be tested, immediately my mind goes to, all right, there's a test. Am I going to pass? Am I going to fail? Is God kind enough to grade on a curve? And so if we all fail, we all kind of still pass? That's what it is. But that's not the kind of test that God's talking about here. The Greek word for testing is actually the word dokimion. And it's the same word that's used to describe what a silversmith does with raw silver. So in case you're not familiar with this, I'll tell you how he does this. And so a silversmith goes and he gets the raw material, right? He gets this ore and you put it in a big pot. And then you light a really hot fire underneath the pot. And then slowly that material starts to break down. It starts to melt. And somewhere along the way, all of the dirt, all of the impurity, all of the things that aren't silver, they begin to rise to the surface. And then the silversmith takes an instrument and he scrapes the impurities away. And then he lets it cool. And then he does it again. He heats it up, the impurities rise to the top, and then he scrapes it away. Then he does it again. Lets it cool, heats it up, impurities rise up, scrapes it away. And he does this over and over and over and over again. And so think about what you're facing right now. Or think about maybe the season that you just walked through. Is it possible that the pain that you so desperately want to avoid is the very heat that God has blessed your life with to simply start to raise the selfishness up to the surface? I'm going to raise the lust up to the surface. I'm going to raise the pride up to the surface. I'm going to raise all of these things where my life revolves around me and the things that destroy my life. Could it be that the heat of the challenge is the very answer to the prayers that you've been praying? God, make me more like you. But is it possible that he's trying? You just keep running away because it's hard. You just keep quitting because it's not exactly how you wanted it to be. But is it possible that he's trying to answer your prayers? It just doesn't look the way you thought it would, where the problems just go away. But rather, it's heating you up. It's bringing those impurities to the surface so that he can scrape them away. Because here's the thing about silver. Eventually, you get it to the point to where the silver is so pure. You've gone through this process of heating it up, cleaning it up, scraping it away so many times that the silver is so pure that when the silversmith looks at it, all he can see is his own reflection. And so in the constant fire of your challenges, how beautiful is it that the God of creation brings your life to a point to where he can now look in, and after the refining, after the testing, after your life has been proofed and purified by fire, the God of all creation looks into your life and now sees his own face. We are called to be transformed into the image of Christ, but it does not happen through comfort. And so embrace discomfort. Embrace the testing of your faith. Because what if you find yourself with a friend that seems unreachable? Seems like no matter what you say, they won't listen. Or what if you've tried everything and you've prayed and prayed for your situation at home to change and nothing's changing? Or what if you've been battling anxiety and depression, or you've got a habit or an addiction that you can't break and your life just feels empty? What if you're surrounded by people every day at school? You've got all these friends on social media. You've got all these followers. You're in a room full of people, but yet you in this moment have never felt more alone. Can I encourage you that for some of you, it may be that these challenges that you're in, the obstacles that you're facing, could it actually be an opportunity for God to show up and show off in your life? Could it be an opportunity that this current misery that you find yourself in is actually going to be a future ministry to where you take the comfort from God that you've received and you use it to impact someone else going through the exact same thing that you struggled with? Could it be that these things that feel like setbacks are actually setting you up for a divine impact in the future? And so embrace it. Let your current pain produce something great in you. Currently, for another few months, I'm still 25 years old. I'm about to be 26. And although I don't think I'm real old, I've still done some cool things in my life. Right? Like this, for me, every week, this is a cool thing for me. Right? To get to preach to you guys, to get to lead this group. But besides this, right, I've been on some cool trips. Michaela and I are raising a kid. That's cool. I've bought some stuff. But ultimately, the most valuable things that I possess today is what God has created inside of me by His presence through the context of pain. Right? Those are the most valuable things in my life because those things that He's created within me have made me more like Jesus. God has so much more for us than just a shallow pursuit of comfort. And so if we're embracing the authentic, if we're going to embrace divine discomfort, then lastly, I want to encourage you to embrace one more thing. In a culture obsessed with living our best life, I want to encourage you to embrace that this is not your best life. Embrace that this isn't your best life. It was never purposed to be your best life. Paul to the church in Rome brings us some chronology. All right, Romans 8:18, he says, "Yet we suffer now. Yet what we suffer now is nothing compared to the glory He will reveal to us later." What we suffer now cannot compare to what He will reveal to us later. So what we see is that there is a best life, but it is not here, and it certainly is not now. The Bible says God has set eternity in the hearts of men. This means that you are created with a longing inside of you for the divine, with a desire for heaven. And most of us have spent the better part of our lives trying to fill this vacuum, trying to fill this void with everything else but God. And the reality is that if you're trying to fulfill an eternal longing with temporary comfort, your life is empty. I promise you it is. Because trying to fulfill an eternal longing with temporary comfort will always lead to an empty life. Right? It's like eating candy for every meal of the day. Right? It tastes great in the moment, but then 5 minutes later, you're going to be hungry again. Right? Because it's like, well, that was fun. But now it's like, well, I need more. What's the next thing? And then what's the next thing? And the next thing. That's what we're doing with our lives. You're longing for something that this world cannot give you. It cannot satisfy the longing, the desire, the craving in your heart. And so if you live your life that has been built for heaven on an earthly existence, it's going to fall short. It will fall terribly short. And so what do? Right? What you do is this. You live like this. You live like this. Arms open, hands open. You let go of your ambition. You dream things that God dreams. You allow yourself to have your heart broken for the things that breaks God's heart. You're burdened for the lost, for those that are less fortunate. You're not holding tightly to the things of this world. Your arms are open for whatever God has for you. And in the words of Jesus in Matthew 16, he says this. He says, if you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, if you let it go, you will save it. Stop chasing an empty, counterfeit comfort. And could we just start embracing what the pain and what the challenges will produce in our lives? Would we have the courage and the boldness to dream dreams? Would we live with such audacity and boldness that God is necessary to show up to accomplish these things through us? And when times get hard and you feel like life isn't what it's supposed to be, would you dare to remind yourself that your best life is still yet to come? And choose rather to embrace the God of all comfort and allow him to be your source of all comfort instead of pursuing things of this world to fill a heavenly void. And so I don't know what your response tonight needs to look like, but I do know that each and every one of us has something to respond with. Right? Because maybe that void in your life is because you've never known the God of all comfort. You've never known the Father's love. And so the Father's love is not in you. This comfort is not in you. And so you need to start tonight by knowing God, by entering into a relationship with him. And if that's you, if you have questions about that, find one of us, find a leader. Talk to your family group leader, right? But address that, right? Ask the hard questions. Enter into that conversation. Enter into a relationship with God. Begin to know his comfort. Begin to know his love. And embrace the life that he has for you. Or maybe tonight, for you, it's just that the love of the Father has not penetrated your heart as deeply as it needs to. But tonight it's been brought to the surface, right? This has been uncomfortable for you, and it's brought some things to the surface. Don't leave them there, but bring them to God and let him scrape them off the top to continue to make you more and more pure, more and more like him. Whatever those things are, that through the testing, through the heating up, through the pain and the discomfort, bring them to God. Whatever sin, whatever addiction, whatever things may be in your past, your present, bring them to God. He can handle it. He wants to make you more and more like him, into the image of his Son. Or maybe tonight you are just so grateful to have a God of comfort, a God that comforts us in our trouble, a God that uses the pain and the challenges for a greater purpose. And maybe you're just coming out of a painful season, but now you see that there is a greater purpose to it. That this is actually a ministry that you can use to reach people struggling just like you. So maybe you need to pray by yourself or with a group of friends that can hold you accountable and embrace this discomfort together. Or maybe you just feel called to stand and to worship a God that loves us, a God that comforts us, a God that walks through life with us and doesn't leave us by ourselves. Whatever that looks like for you, whether it's by yourself, with a group of friends, with an adult, you respond however God is leading you to in this moment. And then after this time of individual response, we'll break off into our family groups, and then we'll be dismissed for the night. But you respond now however the Lord leads in this moment.